Hello students, this is your history lesson and in this lesson we will read chapter 10, The Legacy of the Mughals from class 7. First of all, I will tell you about the Mughal legacy so that you may be able to understand properly about the Mughal Empire. So we start our lesson. The Mughal Empire lasted from 1526 to 1858 for more than 200 years till the British gained control over India. This empire bequeathed our country with a rich legacy ranging from art and designs, architecture to cuisine, and a very distinctive artistic style that mixed European influences with those from Persia and India. Relics of this empire still remain, and India still looks back at its Mughal history and upholds its inheritance with pride. The Indian subcontinent has always been characterized by an immense diversity with respect to its population and culture. Back during the Middle Ages, it was thus naturally a very difficult task for any ruler to annex the entire country. In fact, all notable empires in India before the Mughals were either restricted to the northern part of the country or to the southern part. However, quite in contrast to their predecessors, the Mughals built an empire spanning almost all of India and thus created history. It was after the second half of the 16th century that they expanded their kingdom from Agra and Delhi till in the 17th century they had conquered nearly all of the subcontinent. Now come to page number 66, the Mughal Empire. Students, the Mughal Empire was an early modern empire of South Asia. And legacy mean money or property that you receive from someone after they die. Now come to the reading. The Mughal Empire functioned effectively in the main areas of government, administration, military and justice. This brought about stability which allowed economic and social development. So, what was the Mughal Empire function? What was the contribution to the government is that uh, they did work powerfully, effectively, skillfully to make the government stable, developed, so that the state could be able to become strong economically and socially. Taking up the administrative system means the management of the affairs of an organization. Taking up the administrative system put in place by the Delhi Sultanate and then Sher Shah, the Mughals further refined, developed or improved. There were separate departments for finance, agriculture, trade, education, justice, etc. that were served and supervised by talented and competent people like Raja Todermal, Itmaduddaulah, Afzal Khan and Raghunath Rai, to name a few, as well as governors of the provinces, military commanders, and religious scholars who advised the kings. Competent, having the necessary ability, knowledge, or skill to do something skillfully. So, in the government system, there were different persons who were performing their duty skillfully. They had knowledge to run the government. So their work was, their duty was to advise the king in different matters. The army was well equipped and well organized. So the army of the Mughal Empire was well organized, and they have weapons, modern weapons to fight with the enemies. The Mir Bakshi was a very important position, as he was in charge of the army's postings, salaries, and supplies, and received news reports from all over the empire. So, Mir Bakshi, who was Mir Bakshi? Mir Bakshi was the head of the military administration in the region of Akbar's reign. So, his duty was to look after the salaries, supplies, and news reports from all over the empire. He was appointed to distribute salaries and supplies of items among the soldiers and forces, as well as he received news reports from all over the empire. The Mughals introduced the use of guns and cannon, and also produced weapons of excellent quality. So, in that period of Mughal Empire, it was first time that they introduced guns, cannons, and modern weapons to fight with the enemy. After the end of the 30 years war in Europe, 30-year war in Europe means this was the war in 17th century, and it was a religious conflict fought primarily in Central Europe. The war lasted from 1618 to 1648, starting as a battle among the Catholic and Protestant states that formed the Holy Roman Empire. So, after the end of the 30 years war in Europe in the 17th century, many adventurers from Europe and neighboring regions came to India and served in the Mughal army. So, when the war was ended and there was peace in Europe, many adventurers, many travelers came to India and served in the Mughal army. The Mughals did not have a navy, although boats and sea-going ships were built and used to transport cargo and people and for pilgrims going to Arabia for Hajj. It was a deficiency of navy in Mughal Empire, but they have boats and ships so that they could transport heavy weapons and things, goods and people from one place to another place, as well as they could be able to manage pilgrims to take to Arabia for Hajj. The maintenance of law and order in the empire was given importance, as it meant stability for the government and security for the people and their work and trade. Laws of Akbar's government were people friendly and fair to Muslims and Hindus alike. Jahangir's sense of justice for all is evident from the chain of justice. He put up in Agra qazis and muftis known for their understanding and study of law, and its fair application were appointed. The government also provided funds for deserving people of four types: scholars, saints, mystics, illiterate, weak and poor people, and uneducated people of noble birth who could not earn their living. These welfare measures were continued by Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. The Mughal emperors from Akbar to Aurangzeb spent 5 to 6 hours daily in meeting people and dealing with state business in the Diwan-e-Am, where common people as well as ambassadors, governors, victorious military commanders, and also prisoners were presented. Stability means the quality of being state and firmness of character. And Agra is the city of Taj Mahal in India. And Qazi is the judge in Islam appointed by the state in each city. Mufti, a Muslim legal expert who is empowered to give rulings on religious matters. Saint, a holy person, especially one who has been officially honored with the title by a Christian church. So, students, these are the person who were appointed um, for the maintenance of law and order in the country. So, they were very efficient persons who performed their duties very well. India came to be known for its fabulous riches and wealth, which attracted people from far off lands. Riches is wealth. The Portuguese came in the 15th century and were followed in the 17th century by the Dutch, the English, and the French, who wished to benefit from trade with India and made enormous profits in the process. Students, Portuguese means belonging or relating to Portugal or its people, language, or culture. So, when the people of Portugal came in the 15th century, there came other people, other nationality, as we can say Dutch, English, and French, who came to India to do trade with the subcontinent, and they wanted to get profit from this land. This land was rich and fertile land, so they wanted to make progress by doing trade with this land. Society, education, religion, and culture. The Mughal way of life became a part of the society and culture of both Hindus and Muslims. It extended to all the people and gave them dignity, peace, and prosperity. At the same time, a flowering of the arts and architecture took place, which has left its mark forever in the subcontinent. As Mughal Empire was very rich and organized empire, it gave focus to all the aspects of life. Similarly, it gave space to the dignity, peace, and prosperity of people. For this purpose, uh, a, a big importance, a huge importance was given to art and architecture in the subcontinent. By the mid 19th century, Muslim poetry, prose, humor, and irony had all reached peaks of sophistication. Sophistication is the quality of being comfortable in social situations and knowing about culture, fashion, and other matters. Delhi and Lucknow were the main centers of excellence for Muslim culture. So these were the states where Muslim culture flourished and went to its peak. The Mughals took a lot from the Persian court and culture. Persian became the official language of the Mughal Empire. The court mannerisms, dress, and etiquette reflected Persian civilization, especially during the time of Nur Jahan. As Mughal were Persian from origin, so the reflection of this culture was prominent in their court. So Persian became the official language of the Mughal Empire, as well as their dress and their etiquettes were very similar to Persian civilization. Literature and music were other great contributions by the Mughals to the Muslim civilization of the subcontinent. Another great contribution was in literature and music. Poets and historians have left behind outstanding literary works of prose, poetry, history, and religious study. The Mughal emperors themselves, particularly Babur and Jahangir, have left behind their autobiographies, Tuzke Babri and Tuzke Jahangiri. The Mughal emperors themselves, particularly Babur and Jahangir, have left behind their autobiographies, Tuzke Babri and Tuzke Jahangiri. Students, autobiographies mean an account of a person's life written by that person. The style of court historians in recording in fine detail the era they lived in is found in Aine Akbari and Akbarnama, Jahangirnama, Shahjahanama, and the compilation of Muslim law by Aurangzeb, the Fatwa-e-Alamgiri. The Mughals patronized poets. Patronized poets mean showing or characterized by a superior attitude towards other. The Mughals patronized poets, writers, and scholars of their times. So students, from this paragraph we learn that the Mughal emperors were much lover of literature and music. They were fond of book reading and book writing, and the examples of this is that they wrote different books telling their own accounts, as Tuzke Babri, Tuzke Jahangiri, and Shahnama, Jahangirnama, Akbarnama as well. In these books, they told very much about their personality, their stage, and the contribution and development which was done in their period. Mughal rule produced exceptional poets like Asadullah Khan Ghalib, Mir Taqi Mir, and Sauda, who reflected the sadness and the inevitable decline of the Mughals. Inevitable decline means unable to be avoided or escaped. To go down in amount or quality. Decline, to go down in amount or quality. So these were the famous poets of Mughal Empire. In their poetry, there is a reflection of the decline of that era. Their poetry laments the plight of the Muslims in the 18th. Their poetry laments the plight of the Muslims in the 18th and 19th centuries. Mir saw the rise of the Marathas and the decline of the Mughal power, and Ghalib saw the rise of the British and the final collapse of Muslim power in India. Both saw destruction. Mir saw Nadir Shah's sack of Delhi, and Ghalib lived through the destruction of Delhi by the British. The poets reveal the despair they feel at the loss of their city of culture. So, students, these were the poets, famous poets of that time, who who experienced the time of disappointment. So, they told about that specific time, specific era in their poetry. They depicted the atmosphere, the environment, culture, and feelings of the people of that time. Women in the Mughal era were by no means backward. The ladies of the Mughal courts and palaces were not only educated but also well versed in social etiquettes, the arts, politics, and even horse riding. Noor Jahan accompanied Jahangir on his travels to different parts of the empire and also on his hunting expeditions. Noor Jahan was the wife of Jahangir, so she was well versed and well trained in different skills, different arts of life, as she was expert in house riding. In fact, she was a very good shot herself and once won a costly diamond bracelet from the king as a reward for her marksmanship. Babur's daughter Gulbadin Begum wrote a very interesting account of her brother Humayun's life and times. Shah Jahan's daughter Jahanara was an intelligent and talented person who was his support during his last years in Agra fort and also an advisor to her brother Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb's own daughter Zebunisa was a poet of merit, even though her father did not encourage poetry at his court. So, in the Mughal Empire, women were also not um uneducated. They were powerful at that time and they were trained in many arts. They used to work side by side with their men, at that time. Education in Mughal times. The promotion of the arts and literature during the Mughal era could not have been possible without a high standard of education. The Ain Akbari quotes that there were 52 universities in and around Thatha in Sindh during Jahangir's time. As one historian, Rawlinson comments, the high degree of culture in Mughal India was largely the result of the excellent system of education. Changes to the curriculum had already taken place during the time of the Mughals, under whom the the Nizami curriculum of Mullah Nizamuddin of Farangi Mahal came into vogue. Popular. It primarily included the mental sciences like logic, philosophy, and scholastic theology, and focused on providing instruction in grammar, logic, philosophy, rhetoric, and mathematics. Rhetoric mean speech or writing intended to be effective and influence people. more than in tafsir, fiqh, and hadith. Tafsir is the Arabic word usually for Quran. It means to explain. Therefore, tafsir of Quran means the explanation or interpretations of the verses of Quran. And fiqh, the word fiqh is an Arabic term meaning deep understanding or full comprehension. It means the study of the Islamic legal code, meaning, pronunciation, translations, and examples. The Darsi Nizami became the general course, while for religious teaching the Madrasas Rahimia was more suitable, and later it developed into the religious system of Deoband. Deoband is an Islamic revivalist movement within Sunni Islam that formed around the Darul Uloom Islamic Seminary in the town of Deoband, India. Akbar was himself unlettered, poorly educated, but he gave much thought to education, syllabuses and their content, and the teaching methodology for his subjects. The Mughal emperors encouraged education by setting up schools and seminars. Grants to scholars, poets, writers, and teachers kept the standard high. Books were rare and costly as they had to be transcribed. Transcribed mean put into written or printed form, as they had to be transcribed by hand, as the printing process for the Naskh and Nastaliq scripts was yet unknown. But a personal library was considered essential for a scholar. Nearly every nobleman in Mughal times had a sizable library of his own. In 1641, the library at Agra contained 24,000 volumes and was valued at 6.5 million rupees. In summing up, Sleeman shows great appreciation of the quality of Muslim education in India. Perhaps there are few communities in the world among whom education is more generally diffused. Diffused mean spread over a wide area. Perhaps there are few communities in the world among whom education is more generally diffused than among Mohammedans in India. He who holds an office worth 20 rupees a month commonly gives his sons an education equal to that of a prime minister. They learn through the medium of Arabic and Persian language what young men in our colleges learn through those of Greek and Latin, that is grammar, rhetoric, and logic. Literary works such as Gulistan, Bustan, Akhlaq-e Jalali, Akhlaq-e Nasiri, and Anwar-e Sohaili were widely read. In 1835, when English replaced Persian as the official language of the British Empire in India, Muslim education received a setback from which it would never recover because Persian and Arabic no longer had the economic power to benefit the people of the subcontinent. So, with the arrival of British forces, British people, the education system was finished and it was a decline of Mughal Empire. Religious tolerance. The Mughals came from Central Asia and were Muslim by birth, having converted centuries ago, but they treated kingship as their profession. Kingship, dignity of a king. They did not come to convert or oppress the people of India because of their religious beliefs. Hence, they practiced a form of religion which was personal and tolerant towards the people they ruled. As they were Muslim, they had patience, they had um, tolerance. Uh, they they did not want to rule the people uh, for the religious beliefs. They did not force uh, the people. They did not force the people to leave their beliefs and leave their religion. They they gave them freedom to focus on their ideas and thoughts. Babur and Humayun had little time to administer the state, but Akbar ruled for nearly 50 years. He was influenced by the liberal ideas of the Persians and Sufis, and Abul Fazl, Fazi, and their father Sheikh Mubarak were his mentors. Mentors, an experienced and trusted advisor. His discussions in the Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri with Jains, Hindus, Christians, Jewissts, and Muslim ulama led him to evolve a new religious order called Deen Ilahi in an effort to bring about peace and harmony among his subjects. However, both Hindus and Muslims rejected it, and even at court, Raja Babal was the only one to become part of this cult. Cult are religious group often living together where beliefs are considered extreme or strange. Akbar did not impose it on anyone and the cult died out with him. Akbar also passed a law forbidding the practice of sati among Hindu women. So, students, they gave freedom to everyone to follow their own religion, and Akbar also mm, was against uh, the practice of sati. You know what was the practice of sati? If a woman's husband was died, the people of her family also forced her to die at once. They used to bury, they used to burn her at once with her husband. The move to find common ground between Hinduism and Islam was opposed by Sheikh Ahmad Sirhandi, also known as Mujaddid al-Sani. He stressed that Islam's beliefs were unique and unalterable. They embodied the concept of an ummah or a community of believers embodied to represent a quality or an idea exactly. Sirhandi was jailed by Jahangir for his refusal to bow before the king, but later released by him and kept at court. Shah Jahan went back to a formal recognition of the purely Islamic way of life. A more severe reaction to blending of other faiths with Islam came from Aurangzeb, who was influenced by Sirhandi and he followed the simple and austere form of Islam by leading a pious and morally correct life as emperor. Austere, severe, or strict in manner or attitude. So, here was a man called Sheikh Ahmad Sarhandi, who was very much opposed. He was against of the new laws introduced by Akbar, and due to his action, due to his opposition, he was sent to jail. And after some period, he was released and he was kept at court. So, students, another influence was upon Aurangzeb, who was much impressed by Sarhandi, and he followed the simple and austere form of Islam by leading a pious and morally correct life as emperor. So he was impressed by his thought and he followed the same pattern. His reimposition of jizya did affect Hindu and Rajput loyalty to the Mughal crown since Akbar had abolished this tax. However, Aurangzeb did not differentiate against the Hindus in terms of office. Raghunath Roy was an important advisor, and the commander in chief for Aurangzeb's army was a Hindu. Aurangzeb also revoked the collection of jizya from non-Muslims in 1704. So, students, they believed that Hindus should be equal as the Muslims were in the court of Mughal Empire. So, they gave equal post and ranks to Hindus in their court. In religion, he was an orthodox. Orthodox mean someone or something that strictly adheres to religious beliefs. In religion, he was an orthodox Sunni Muslim who thought of himself as a model Muslim ruler. He differed from Akbar in consciously tolerating Hindus rather than treating them as equals. Mughal art and architecture. The Mughal style of painting mirrored the work of Persian artists such as Khwaja Abdus Samad and Mir Sayyid Ali, who had studied under Behzad, the famous Persian artist. These two artists had earlier come with Humayun from Persia. The mixture of Central Asian, Persian, and Hindu and Indian influences evolved into the Mughal school of painting, whose unique expression was in the form of miniature paintings. These Mughal influences are still alive in Pakistan, where miniature painting thrives as an art form among local artists. Under Akbar, more than 100 artists worked in a large state building at Fatehpur Sikri and were also given mansabs or ahdas. Calligraphy as an art form is a legacy of the Mughal era. Khwaja Abdus Samad was given the title of Shireen Kalam because of his skill in calligraphy. Jahangir was an art critic and could recognize the work of any artist by just one look at their work. Some of Jahangir's albums of paintings are found in the State Library of Berlin, Germany, and another taken away by Nadir Shah is now in the Imperial Library at Tehran, Iran. Book illustrations were also constantly made by artists during the Mughal era. Shah Jahan's aesthetic ability was well known, and architects as well as painters were patronized by him. However, painting took a different direction during Aurangzeb's reign as he used portraits to inform himself about his family and nobles. The splendor and magnificence of the Mughal Empire can be seen in the buildings left behind by its rulers. The mausoleums, mosques, gardens, and forts testify to the artistic beauty and grace cultivated by the Mughal royalty. Babur's love of gardens is well known. However, neither he nor Humayun had the opportunity to give shape to their ideas. The history of Mughal architecture begins with Akbar, who completed Humayun's mausoleum and built the Agra fort and palace city of Fatehpur Sikri with its Pank Mahalla and Buland Darwaza, and also the fortress at Lahore, Ajmer, Allahabad and Attock. Students, mausoleum is a building which contains the grave of a famous person. The construction at Fatehpur Sikri and Agra uses red sandstone, and the carvings and decorations are a blend of Muslim and Hindu styles. Itmadul Dola's mausoleum at Agra is one of a kind among all the architectural heritage of the Mughals, built by Noor Jahan. It is a perfect blend of Persian and Indian craftsmanship. She also had Jahangir's tomb made at Shadra in Lahore. Jahangir's love of gardens led to a number of gardens in the Mughal style, like the Shalimar and Nishad gardens in Kashmir, while Shah Jahan built a large garden named Shalimar at Lahore, also known Shalimar. Shah Jahan also laid the foundation of a new city, Shah Jahanabad, now part of Delhi, and built the imposing Lal Killa, the Red Fort in Delhi. He preferred the use of white marble, and the Taj Mahal is regarded as one of the wonders of the world in architecture. Other buildings of his time are Moti Masjid at Agra, Jamia Masjid at Delhi, a beautiful mosque at Thatta in Sindh, and a palace mosque and fort at Kabul. The decorative and elegant style of Shah Jahan's buildings gives way to the more restrained but nevertheless grand style of Aurangzeb's monuments. The Badshah Masjid in Lahore, built by him in 1674, is the second largest mosque in Pakistan. In conclusion, the Mughal era is remarkable for the diversity of excellence achieved in various fields, be it administration of a vast empire, religious, tolerance, cultural and literacy fields, or architectural magnificence. The exalted empire was a superpower of the age. In 1700, India had a population of 180 million, about 20% of the world population. Most of these were in one form or another under the hegemony. Hegemony, hegemony is the dominance of one group over another. Under the hegemony of the Mughal emperor in Delhi, to have an idea of the scale of the empire, we need to imagine present day India, except the south, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, as one entity. Now come to the questions. 1. Why were good government and law and order important to the Mughal Empire? Answer. The Mughal Empire functioned effectively in the main areas of government, administration, military, and justice. This brought about stability, which allowed economics and social development. Taking up the administrative system put in place by the Delhi Sultanate, and then Sher Shah, the Mughals further refined it. There were separate departments for finance, agriculture, trade, education, justice, etc., that were served and supervised by talented and competent people like Raja Todarmal, Itmaduddaulah, Afzal Khan, and Raghunath Rai, to name a few, as well as governors of the provinces, military commanders, and religious scholars who advised the kings. The army was well equipped and well organized. The Mir Bakshi was a very important position as he was in charge of the army's postings, salaries, and supplies and received news reports from all over the empire. 2. What welfare measures did the Mughal rulers provide? What does this show? Answer. The maintenance of law and order in the empire was given importance as it meant stability for the government and security for the people and their work and trade. Laws of Akbar's government were people friendly and fair to Muslims and Hindus alike. Jahangir's sense of justice for all is evident from the chain of justice. The government also provided funds for the deserving people of four types: scholars, saints, mystics, illiterate, weak, and poor people, and uneducated people of noble birth who could not earn their living. These welfare measures were continued by Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. 3. The Mughals were Turks by birth. Why was Persian influences so prominent at the Mughal court? Answer. The lineage of the Mughals can be traced back to two great rulers. Records have proved that Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongolian Empire of China and Central Asia, was their ancestor from the maternal side, whereas from their paternal side they were the successors of Timur, none other than the erstwhile emperor of Iraq, Iran, and what is known today as Turkey. When Mughals entered Persia, a number of ethnic Persian technocrats, bureaucrats, traders, scientists, architects, teachers, poets, artists, theologians, and Sufis migrated and settled in different parts of the Indian subcontinent. The Mughals took a lot from the Persian court and culture. Persian became the official language of the Mughal Empire. The court, mannerisms, dress, and etiquette reflected Persian civilization. 4. Education was an important concern of the Mughal rulers. Explain with examples. Answer. The promotion of the arts and literature during the Mughal era could not have been possible without a high standard of education. The Ain-e-Akbari quotes that there were 52 universities in and around Thatta in Sindh during Jahangir's time. As one historian, Rawlinson, comments, the high degree of culture in Mughal India was largely the result of the excellent system of education. Changes to the curriculum had already taken place during the time of the Mughals, under whom the Darsi Nizami curriculum of Mullah Nizamuddin of Farangi Mahal came into vogue. It primarily included the mental sciences like logic, philosophy, and scholastic theology, and focused on providing instruction in grammar, logic, philosophy, rhetoric, and mathematics more than in tafsir, fiqh, and hadith. The Darse-e-Nizami became the general course while for religious teaching into the religious system of Deoband. Although both men and women received education in Mughal times, women did not go out of their homes. Instead, tutors were appointed by the nobility for their children. 5. Why did the Mughal emperors follow a policy of religious tolerance towards their subject? Answer. The Mughals came from Central Asia and were Muslim by birth, having converted centuries ago, but they treated kingship as their profession. They did not come to convert or oppress the people of India because of their religious beliefs. Hence, they practiced a form of religion which was personal and tolerant towards the people they ruled. Akbar was influenced by the liberal ideas of the Persians and Sufis, and Abdul Fazl Faizi and their father Sheikh Mubarak were his mentors. His discussions in the Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri with Jains, Hindus, Christians, Jewists, and Muslim ulama led him to evolve a new religious order called Dinil Ilahi in an effort to bring about peace and harmony among his subjects. 6. Why is Mughal architecture called magnificent? Answer. The Mughal style of painting mirrored the work of Persian artists. Under Akbar, more than 100 artists worked in a large state building at Fatehpur Sikri and were also given mansabs or awdas. Calligraphy as an art form is a legacy of the Mughal era. Khwaja Abdus Samad was given the title of Shirin Kalam because of his skill in calligraphy. Jahangir was an art critic and could recognize the work of any artist by one look at their work. Shah Jahan's aesthetic ability was well known, and architects as well as painters were patronized by him. The splendor and magnificence of the Mughal Empire can be seen in the building left behind by its rulers. The mausoleums, mosques, gardens, and forts testify to the artistic beauty and grace cultivated by the Mughal royalty. Shah Jahan also laid the foundation of a new city, Shah Jahanabad, now part of Delhi, and built the imposing Lal Killa, the Red Fort in Delhi. He preferred the use of white marble, and the Taj Mahal is regarded as one of the wonders of the world in architecture. 7. Describe the similarities in the cultural life of the Mughals and those found in Pakistan's culture today. Answer. Mughals believed in Islamic practices, and now people of Pakistan also practicing the same Islamic rituals and following same religion of Islam which Mughals followed. We eat similar food and have similar cuisines. Our national dress for men, shalwar kameez, is partly inspired by them. Mughal painting styles also practices by today Pakistani artists. In both culture, their government system encourage education by setting up schools and seminars with generous grants to scholars, writers, poets, and teachers to keep up the high standard of education. The Mughal Empire functioned effectively with separate departments dealing with agriculture, trade, justice, education, military, and the running of the royal households. Law and order was maintained throughout the empire with justice accorded by qazis and muftis. This structure of government body system can be seen in today's Pakistan. Tourism relies on an exposition of a country's visible achievements in the form of monuments, churches, courts of law, palaces, and museums. Hence, Mughal buildings and gardens are a valuable asset for Pakistan's culture and history. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.